and welcome back to our next episode of Big Data Talks, in which we have conversations with industry experts about the way in which data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are changing the way we live. My name is Jan-Willem Middelburg, and I will be your host today. I'm the author of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, which is hosting this series of Big Data Talks. You can always watch back the recording of this discussion on YouTube, the Big Data Framework website, and the podcasting platforms on Android and iOS. I'm extremely pleased to announce my next guest for today, which is Ms Laila Faridoon, a passionate Emirati speaker, author, and leading professional advisor in digital and business transformation, with more than 19 years of experience with the Dubai government as executive director and chairman office in the RTA for the past 13 years. She is the founder of Looking Forward Consultancy, a professional career mentor and spiritual coach for self-growth and career growth. She's also been chosen in 2019 as an ambassador of goodwill by the League of Arab Organization. Laila holds a master's degree in computer science and is currently pursuing her PhD in the field of the fourth industrial revolution in King's College today. And we're going to be talking about that in a lot more in detail. Laila is also an active researcher in the field of project management and digital transformation. She was featured in many books, such as the Data-Driven PMO Success Stories across industries and around the world by Mark Perry in 2013, The DNA of Strategy Execution by Jack Duggal in 2018, and Advanced Project Management in 2018 by Harold Kerzner. She's also authored a book herself, Looking Forward to the Bright Side, that is based on her own journey in life and gives you a guide on how to transform your life towards the one you want. Laila has extensive experience, and you can only see why I'm so pleased to welcome her today towards Big Data Talks. Welcome, Laila. It's such a pleasure to speak to you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. It's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I think the last time that we saw each other in person is already a couple of months ago. It was in Saudi Arabia at the PMI conference, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So I was super impressed with your presentation on the stage right there. And I think with me, many other people. So I was extremely pleased that you agreed to be a guest on our Big Data Talk session today. Really look forward to talking to you.
Thank you. So big data is a passion area. So when we talk about technology, digital transformation, I'm all yours. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's very good. I'm quite sure we're going to be filling this hour. It's going to be quick over before we know it. The first topic that I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit around is one of your big passions, which is digital transformation. Mm-hmm. And I'm very interested to learn from you, from your opinion, what is digital transformation in an organization? And also from your experience in government, how is the government sector embracing digital adoption?
So digital transformation is simply strategic change. And this strategic change resulted because of the adoption of the emerging technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, like big data analytic, AI, blockchain, cloud computing, Internet of Things. It's simply moving from the value creation of simple IT automation to a full digitalization platforms. So this is it in a nutshell. When we come to the government organizations, as I said, this is strategic change. But then because this strategic change involves not only technology, it involves a lot of other aspects, it becomes a business transformation. The main challenges that I have seen in government, and as being reported as well by many other academic and practitioners, is I can summarize them in 3 main points. Number one is the change of mentality. So they need first to understand the what does it mean to have a full digitized surface model. That's not yet there. So to reach that maturity and understanding, they would need to change culture. They would need to change mindset. They need to acquire the right human skills, and that's number two. So human skills, and we're talking here about technical skills and leadership as well. And then the third and main, which I think we'll talk more about it here, is the required organizational capabilities. As I said, it's a change of a business, so it's a business transformation. With any business transformation, you would need to understand what are the required new organizational capabilities that need to be added, and also you would need to understand what other organizational capabilities, the already existing one, you need to integrate these new capabilities. So these are the three main challenges government is facing today in order to be able to adopt digital transformation.
And can you elaborate a little bit more on those capabilities? Because you're right, that's a topic that always interests me personally a lot, around how can you build those capabilities. If you were to, from your experience, list, let's say, one or two capabilities that you think are crucial, what would they be?
Well, so decision-making definitely is one of the most important capabilities, and we will talk about this more. Organizational learning is another capabilities that need to be there, because when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, or all the technology of the fourth industrial revolution, at the end they all give you data. And then this data, the big data, get fed to a machine. This machine uses AI to analyze and to give you insights that you're looking for. In order to be able to use that, or to get the potential, or to get the main benefits out of these technologies, you would need to really to build a mature organizational capabilities, like processes, governance system, to be able to have everything function together in an ideal way, I would say.
Yeah, so I really like the two things you're meaning, decision-making and learning. I think we can learn a lot from that. And it's also one of the core objectives of this podcast, is to specifically help decision makers with learning something new and to get a perspective that they might not have had before. So today, the whole world is looking at what is happening in Qatar with the World Cup.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the Netherlands was kicked out last week,
Oh.
so we're down to the final four. So yeah, it's a shame we're no longer there, but we're going to see, I think, quite some spectacle in the next few days. In the last few days, I've also been reading a lot around the way that big data and also machine learning algorithms are having a massive influence on things like the World Cup and on sports in general. And I noticed while I was preparing for this interview today that you were recently a panel speaker at the Sports Tech Global Conference.
Yes.
So I was kind of wondering how you experienced that. From your perspective, how do we see digital transformation and the business change that you just talked about? How is that affecting the world of sports?
It's totally reshaping it, honestly. Let me give you two examples, then I will elaborate more on that. So the first example, or the first, I would say, transformation that happened in the one of the important areas in the sport is the athlete performance. So they're using the wearables, they're using sensors to generate a lot of data connected to athlete. And they're using this data to monitor the performance of the athlete. Furthermore, they're also using it to actually change the science of training in sport. So for instance, they use it becomes more personalized. So each athlete has their own set of data that the coach could use to analyze the performance, plan training for that specific person. And also there are a lot of, I was reading a lot of reports about this, that it's being used even in recovery from injuries. So imagine the amount of information that's available now to a coach. It makes their life easy, I would say. It made it already, I would say, easier. So that's one major area in the sport that's been reshaped by the digital transformation. Another area is the augmented reality, the metaverse, and all the different virtual realities, 3Ds, and so on. So an example, also I'll give you an example. Formula One cooperated with Amazon, the Amazon Web Service platform. They used it to create a full simulation for their racing environment. And the main idea behind that was to redesign the race car that they used in 2022. And it gave them a lot of information and enabled them to do a full wheel-to-wheel experience. So that's another area that's been used in the sport. Then the third area, and this is really a challenge. This is a challenge, and most of the report says that by 2025, if they don't really overcome this challenge, it would be an issue. And that's simply fans' engagement. So, now because of the availability of digital platform, availability of information, fans becoming more demanding. They are more, I would say, they have more power now because they own what they want to see. And they simply can impose, in a way, their own decisions that, according to this availability of information, we know now what we want, how we want it. And specifically, if you think of the younger generation, the demand is high there. So the sport business or the sport industry, they need to look into this area, and they need to adapt in a way this kind of behavior, because at the end it's all about your consumer behavior, right? So there is a huge shift in the consumer behavior when it comes to the fan engagement. And I'm sure now in the World Cup, everyone witnessed all the digital solution that's being used to collect data about the people in the stadium, to collect data about people connected online and so on. It's a rich platform that you really, if you use it right, as we said, if you overcome the challenges like having the right organizational capabilities, having the right people, the human resources that you need to deal with this kind of information, they could generate, I would say, fortune out of this. They could manage their sponsorship packages as well. So imagine the information you have now. You could control the kind of sponsorship that you want to go or you want to be part of. You could as well use it to justify it. So if you go to your management, for instance, and you want to justify certain sponsorship, now you have data. So you're not anymore talking about speculation. You have actual data that you could use to convince them. So these are major areas, and like any other business, the challenges are there, and it needs an immediate action because everyone is moving. It's a race. Everyone is moving there. And I remember a quote that I read from Schwab's book, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, simply says there is no other choices, either transform or be transformed. Clear.
That's a very, very, very powerful quote.
It is, yeah.
I really like what you're saying in terms of that it's ultimately a race, and I think there's probably no area where that is better reflected in with sports. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into some of the three examples that you've given, and what I really liked is that you are approaching the data and analytics perspective not just from increased decision making, which is typically the internal perspective that we're mostly looking at, but also from the perspective of the fans and the fan base and how we can make their experience better. But I'm going to get started with kind of I would say, follow-up question around how we could improve coaching. Now with the World Cup, there's a lot of sensors. We can see exactly who has been on the field the most, who has made the most passes, who has set in the most steps on the field, who has run the most kilometers. All of that data is almost trackable, almost by real time. One of the things that is interesting me is that if we are looking at kind of the peak performers in the world, so we're down to the final four in the World Cup, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. If you are competing at that highest level, is sports then still around data, or is it driven by emotions? And given the fact that those teams are very similar in terms of data, is it then a matter of luck or something else? What's your perspective on that?
Well, at the end, there is a human aspect, I would say. Yeah. So no matter how huge is your data, no matter how advanced your technology, if people don't act on it at the right time, then it's useless. As simple as that. Yeah. So it all goes back, as you said, it goes back to the culture, it goes back to the mindset. So as a management or even as an athlete or as a coach, what do you want to do with this data? Yeah. Can you really take that step and trust the information coming from a machine? That would be a question to ask here.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Because I think that's also exactly touching upon the point that we're obviously going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. But even with all the good predictions that we have available, and you are very knowledgeable in algorithms and the way that they can be used to make predictions. But what I find always very interesting is, well, what if we have all of that data, but people are not following up on that? And I think that emotional aspect, that human aspect, as you just mentioned, is still something that we typically tend to forget, especially more from a research and from a data science point of view.
Very true. And that's why when we look into the impact of big data analytics, we go specifically. So there are, as I said, there are many aspects. Organizational capabilities is one, but then at the heart of all the organizational capabilities is a human. So there is a person, there a manager or individual that would need to make a decision based on this, or like taking an action. At the end, you need to take an action. And there are a lot of times where people will be more emotional, of course, and they will rely on their own biases to make decisions. So here comes the question, would they be able to adjust this behavior, I would say, or it's a behavior. So would they be able to adjust this behavior and let go certain biases in order to be able to rely on a data coming from a machine? That's a huge change that needs to be done. And without this change, as you said, it's useless. Data will not benefit anyone if that's not yet achieved.
It's a very interesting question. I'm not quite sure if I have the answer here today, but we can definitely think about that a little bit more on how we could make people become more data-driven and starting to trust that data more. It brings me to the next topic that I kind of want to explore with you a little bit more, and that is the whole field of how data and decision-making are intertwined. You already gave some examples around how data should be powering decisions, but what is your view from all of the experience that you have, both in government and also in the other organizations? How is big data making an impact on decisions that we take in organizations today?
So to answer this question first, we need to understand how decisions are made, or what is decision-making process. So simply decision-making is to choose between different alternatives, having certain information to choose between different alternatives in order to achieve certain goal. So that is decision-making. Now, how would big data impact decision-making? Simply big data, the beauty about big data, that it gives you already information, already data of a quality, I would assume, because we're talking now here about a well-established big data capability. So it gives you quality of data. Then this quality of data is one of the main factors in the decision-making process. Of course, there are many other factors. There are the knowledge of the decision maker. There are the quality of information available, number of options available, cognitive style of the decision maker, which we could elaborate on this more. And then, of course, the organizational culture. So this is how big data impact decision making, by impacting the process of the decision making itself and the decision maker. So
absolutely. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the main thing, and specifically in my own research that I'm more focusing on, and how big data impact decision making, and two main factors. And specifically because I'm doing that within, as you said, government organization, the cognitive style of the decision maker, and the organizational culture. If we think about the way decisions are made in government compared to private sector, of course, we're talking about two extremes here, right? So, So in the government organizations, decision-making process is very, bureaucratic nature. It requires consensus of many, many people in order to be able at the end to reach to a decision. And it takes longer when we compare to other sectors.
Absolutely. So there's one thing that you mentioned that kind of triggered me, and I'd like you to maybe explain a little bit more around that. I'm quite sure this is coming from your research, but I'm also quite sure that there's a couple of listeners today who might not know what you mean with that. So you mentioned the word cognitive style. What is that in kind of a very layman's terms?
Okay. So cognitive style is simply the way you make decisions. If we define cognitive style as the way you perceive, process information. Let's simplify it. It's the way your brain process and perceive information. So you have an information now, what you'll do with it, how you'll make your own decision. And when we say cognitive style, there would be some cognitive biases as well. It all depends on the way the way your brain works in order to make that decision. There are many type of, so according to your cognitive style, there are decision-making style. So there are many kind of decision-making style. There are emotional ones, as we talked about it, and those are more intuitive people. So they rely on their intuition rather than on the rational facts to make decisions. Those people will be a bit struggling when it comes to decision-making based on data. They are the rational decision makers who, no matter how they feel, they always go by the facts that they have. So these are two examples of the cognitive, let's say, decision-making style. So imagine you're an intuitive decision maker and you're a leader in an organization. Your team comes to you with a set of insights from their big data analytics, let's say, capability, or from their big data technology. And they come to you very happy and excited, and they tell you, here we go. These are the facts that we generated. But your own gut feeling tells you, no, I don't believe this, because my gut feeling telling me something totally different. So here comes I would say the struggle. Which one you will choose?
Yeah, it's a very big struggle.
It happens to us in our daily life as well, not only in the business.
Absolutely. And I think I know people from both the different cognitive styles, and it's indeed very true that they approach problems differently.
Yes.
They process information very differently, and they also reach conclusions very differently. So I'm fully aligned with you that you should probably use data in different ways to deal with those different cognitive styles.
Yes, very
just out of my own interest, because I'm always very, very interested in research and people who do research. Do you see that cognitive style is something that is influenced by big data, or can you already kind of share some highlights of the things that you found in your research so far?
It's a two-way actually influence. Yes, definitely big data does influence the cognitive style. Number one, big data eliminates certain biases. Okay. So
can you explain that a little bit more in detail?
Yeah. So big data will give you insight based on you would feed different kind. That's why we call it big data, because we need a huge amount of information that needs to go into that machine. And that machine, when the computation is done, simply when the processing is done, doesn't rely on any biases, assuming that your data is neutral. Because whatever data you enter, the quality of data is very important. That's why we always talk about, you need to make sure that you have a well-established big data analytics capability. And this simply means you have the right people working on it, you have data scientists, you have the right structure, you have the right culture as well working on it. So the assumption is, if you will establish your big data capability, it will give you an insight, or let's say a quality of information that is neutral, that's not biased to any specific thinking style. Okay, so by knowing that, you as a leader could rely on it, because there is no biases. I will not be influenced by my own biases when I use the data coming from a machine, because I know that's already eliminated. So that's how it would impact your cognitive style. That's number one. Number two, the amount of information that will be available to you. You're not anymore limited with one or two options here. Big data will give you more options, will give you more alternative to choose from. So this also will expand the possibilities, and again, when it comes to your own cognitive style, you're not limited. Because of my cognitive style, I could come up with two options, let's say. Because I already eliminated some without even thinking about it. And unconsciously I eliminated some because I already biased to 1, 2, 3. Yeah? So you not even think about it. But then big data, as we said, the bias is eliminated. I will give you all the options. And by having all the options, it means you have more possibilities. And by having more possibilities, so you could come up with something that you never thought of. Like, for instance, we talk about...
So it becomes kind of a bit of a cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you say that becomes more of a cycle? The more information we have, the more clearer the decision-making process is going to be, and therefore it eliminates more bias. Could I look at it that way?
Yes. And it's not only eliminate the bias, it will give you, it's more about giving you, let's say, opening doors to areas where you never thought of because of your biases, not because you cannot think of, just because you're already conditioning your thinking style, I would say. So all these conditions are removed when it comes to big data analytics. Again, assuming you have a well-established big data analytic capability.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's frequently lacking in terms of that well-established big data capability.
Yes, I would always emphasize a well-established big data analytics capability.
Yeah, so that's the big disclaimer in most of these talks, right? So it works unless you have the capability.
Yes.
Good. Just for everyone who's listening, when is your research coming out, or when is it going to be likely published? I know there's always difficult to give a hard deadline, but is it 2-3 years? Is it 1 year? What is it when we can read your investigation?
It's 1 year. I already published one paper about this, about specifically how big data impacts decision making, but the whole research about the full, let's say, implications of big data analytics on organizational performance coming within a year.
That's perfect. So the paper that's already published, we will put the link in the underneath the video for everyone who's interested, and then you can read up around some of the more research that is done on big data and decision making. Laila, there's also another topic that I kind of wanted to discuss with you today, which is a little bit less related towards your work within the big data domain, which is obviously one of the main reasons that I invited you today. But a second topic that I saw that you put a lot of energy and effort in is around leadership, and especially around uplifting women and the female leadership role. And I think that's an excellent part and an excellent initiative. So I'd like to spend some other time to discuss that with you. First thing that I noticed is that you wrote a book, and the book is called Looking Forward to the Bright Side. It explores your personal journey in finding your strengths and obtaining a leadership role and becoming the leader you are today. How do you advocate for female leadership in a predominantly male environment? And let's be honest about it, the big data and the data world, the IT world in general, is still very male dominated. Mm-hmm. So any advice on how people could advocate for more female leadership in these roles?
So it's very important that when we talk about women leadership is eliminate biases. That's very important, yeah?
We're getting back to the big data immediately.
Yes. So I actually would focus more into women, talking to women directly and telling them, I would give 5 advices here. And these are even to all organizations. So when it comes to women, I advise women to use certain, I would say, talent areas that are already built or features. Mm-hmm. So number one is the being the emotional resilience aspect that women master. But suddenly when it comes to work, they forget about it for a reason or another. So flexibility is a great feature that any leader needs. And women, they have it. It's built in us, but then we forget to use it because women becomes more emotional. So I advise women to flip it in a way that use it to your own benefits. So be consistent, be compassionate with your team. When I say consistent with your boss, for instance, or with your superior. So always showcase. And if you have something, just talk about it in a way. So what women would simply shy and go cry, some of them, and instead of facing an issue. Okay, go cry as much as you want, then come and face it. Don't just let this, and then at the end you make someone else come and say that she's emotional. She'll deal with it in her own way. No, you're human. You're a human in the work. When it comes to business, you are a human here. We're not talking about genders anymore. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is be politically savvy. Politics is very important. when it comes to work, if you want to become a leader, you need to understand the science behind politics. You need to understand how the game is being played there at that level. And there are many. I actually had a podcast about this. I can send you the link. That I will give more details about this. And then the third one is be digitally savvy as well. So here we're talking about technology. We're talking about digital transformation. You as a woman or as a leader as well, and this of course applies in both genders, that you need to understand what does a digital transformation mean, the basic, not the technical term of it. You need to understand how digital transformation impacts your business. You need to understand in your business strategy, what are the area that you would like to fully digitize, and what would be the impact at the end and the consumer services. So all this is basic information. If you don't understand about it, then you will not be able to grow your business. And then the last thing I would say is
it about being knowledgeable around the way that data is changing the world as well?
That's one thing, and so that's one general aspect of it. And then the more specific aspect is to really understand why I need to do a digital transformation for my business. What does it mean? What does it mean to fully digitize my services, for instance? I remember, and we talked that this is the first challenge that most of the government organization is facing, but then it's also a mentality change, mindset change. So yes, understand what does it mean to have a full digitized service model. Once you understand this, you can support the transformation. That's very important. And the last point I'll talk about is market yourself. You as a woman, market yourself. Don't wait for anyone to market you. And nowadays we have very good platform. Again, digital platform. So that's all there. You can use it. You can build a proper strategy for yourself to market yourself. Show up, but don't show off. That's very important.
That's a good.
Yeah. So we're here to show. As they say, walk the talk. Simply. So let the people know what you did. Usually women will they will limit themselves. They will think, no, we don't need to go and brag about what we're doing. No, do it. Because when it comes to men, they talk about it proudly. They have no issue. Because they've been brought up, to always be proud of their achievement, of what they're achieving. This should be for both genders. That's not supposed to be limited to any gender, actually. So you as a woman, learn how to do that. That's very important.
I think that last part is absolutely very, I would say, true advice, because that is where you see differences. That shouldn't be there. And I like the quote that you're using, show up but don't show off. It gives you the opportunity to stand on the podium and also tell your story. I can tell everyone who's listening that I've seen Laila speak on a podium in front of thousands of people, and I was very, very impressed with your knowledge at that time. So it does really work in terms of establishment of a leader. So I think that's, for everyone who's listening and wants to get further with that, absolutely very, very sound advice. It brings me to my next question. It's kind of, I always like to put some statements and see what would be your thoughts on how to complete that. In line with this conversation, there is a very ancient saying that says, behind every successful man, there is an even stronger woman. And since you are a strong woman leader yourself, if I were to ask the question the other way around, beyond every strong woman leader, what would there be?
Her own beliefs.
Her own beliefs. That's a very, very interesting one. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So as I said, so we as a woman, we brought up in a way to limit ourselves. So it's all what you believe. If you believe that you're limited with your own capabilities, then this is it. You will always be limited. You will not be able to achieve what you desire. But if you believe that you have the capabilities, you have the talent, you have the required, let's say, all the requirements that need to create a good leader, then you will do it. So don't limit your beliefs. And this, again, goes back to the history. It has nothing to do with certain culture. In a way, it's more like historical, how women are brought up. They're always brought up in a way to limit yourself. So if you change this, it all goes back to because I do love coaching as well. I've noticed that the major barrier between a woman and her, I would say, success is the belief. Once she realizes that I can do it, she does it. There is no, I would say, more obstacle than this. So yes, if you believe you can do it, then you will do it. If you don't believe you can do it, no matter where you are, no matter who's supporting you, you will not be able to achieve that.
It's a very powerful lesson, and if I can go also the other way around, I think that this is a lesson not just for women, but everyone in general, because that part of belief in terms of what you can do, what you can establish, a lot of people always think, well, this is too complicated, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not up to this. But if you change your view of the world or your belief system, I think people can achieve a lot more than they ever thought that was possible in the first place. Right. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
In relation to that, and this is just a fact, if you open up all the research report, there is still this connotation around specifically the IT sector that is very male-oriented, male-dominated. We see in the last years that there is more interest to get more female tech talent attracted. But you also see that there's still a lot of attraction for other kinds of professions, which are appealing or are attracting more specific female talent. What could we do as either a society or a country or maybe even a government to encourage more female tech talent to actually start diving into data, analytics, machine learning, and all of the things that we talked about so far?
I would say set role models, show, like example. You need to create examples for the girls or for other women to be able to get into certain fields or certain disciplines like IT. And there is sort of a stereotyping that if you, as a woman or as a girl, if you consider a career in the STEM field, then you will end up. So you know, there's this stereotyping that if you go into that field, then you have to be an ugly woman. You're not supposed to be that beautiful, and this is all being, by media, unfortunately, because how they present a scientific woman, for instance, someone with a big glasses. If you think about it, the way even the movies, the way they always they present a scientific woman.
Yeah.
It's like it gives you an image that you don't want to be this woman, right? So when the girls now in a time like now, and where everyone is more focused on beauty and fashion and all the cosmetic aspect, let's be realistic, right? And then you see this an example of how you'll end up being. You mentally, unconsciously as well, you'll decide, no, I don't want to be this. I want to be I want to work in arts. I want to be an artist. I want not a science anymore. But then it's all being brainwashed by media, because this is not reality. We have very talented women. We have very, very beautiful women in the STEM fields. And they're really doing great. And they're good mothers and they're good wives and everything. But no one talks about this. So having a career in STEM doesn't mean that you need to kill all the other aspects of your life. That's why I'm saying more role models. We want to see more role models that people want, that the younger girls or the other women who would like to consider a career, they use them an example. And it's not easy, of course. As you said, it's a male-dominated environment. So when one woman learns how to create, how to survive in an environment like this, how to learn, how to become a successful woman or a leader in an environment like this, then others would want to know. That's why I said market yourself. When you market yourself, you share your own experience, and without you knowing, you give a hope to someone else. You teach someone else that this is how I did it. And actually, that was my main reason for writing my own book. I never thought of writing a book, but this book came as a contribution from me to all others, that this is how you can do it. So when we share our experiences, we give knowledge to others who never thought of it. Me and you, Jan, and others, we take things granted because ABC for us. But when you give it to someone else and they read it, they come and tell you, really? That's how you do it?
Of course, yeah.
So it's all about making a difference in someone's life. And this topic is very dear to my heart. That's why when it comes to the STEM, I would really encourage a lot of women to consider a career in this area.
Yeah. Well, I think by doing this and by writing the book and by being so visible, you're actually turning into a role model for other people who are looking up to also look for a career in the technology and in the data space. I really like what you said in terms of the role models. I have one follow-up around that, because were there any role models for you personally when you were growing up or when you were considering to go into the technology domain? Were there any specific female leaders that you thought, well, this is really strong, I really aspire to be someone like that?
Honestly, not someone specifically in the technology field, but it's more about the science field itself.
Yeah.
My main role model, of course, my mother. It's the way she brought me to believe in myself and to believe that if I want to do something, I can do it, because I have whatever it's required to achieve that. And actually, my story is how I started, or how I decided to do computer science. When I was a kid, I read, that was in 80s. So I read, and that's when the third industrial revolution started, when the computers started at that time. It was booming. So I read in one of the magazine, I don't remember where, that if by 20th century, if you don't know how to use computer, then you will be considered illiterate. And that was something big for me. I'm like, illiterate? Although I have a degree and I studied and so on. Then I went to my dad and I asked him, and he said, yes, what are you going to do? That was the question, what are you going to do? I told him, of course I'm going to master it. That came just like this. I'm going to master it. So that's for me.
It's also very good parenting that they're not saying, well, yeah, that's true, but they're asking the question in return, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. So it sort of makes you think. So this is how the world is going, how you'll adjust to that, what you want to do about this. Yeah. So that's how I decided I'll do computer science, because I read that simply the world will be changing, and I want to be part of that change. I don't want to be left behind. So that's how I decided to do computer science. But going back to the role model, I always really was inspired by a very successful woman, and specifically in the scientific field. So since the school days, I really loved biology. I loved physics, the science. So, and I was so impressed with the teachers, the female teacher who were teaching us, and how knowledgeable they were about topics like this. And I kept asking, how do they do it? Where do they learn this? Why they choose to do this? Because that was in the teaching domain only. But then when I moved from school to university, and I started also seeing more aspect of research coming into the let's say, in the scientific world, and I loved it. So research for me was an answer. Yeah. It's the way you learn and the way you advance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think research is also a good way to kind of learn how to structure your mind and how do you start to become that person that you aspire to be.
True.
And it gives you the opportunity to think about things more deeply. And I think you managed it, because that girl that 20 years ago, her dad asked, what are you going to do about it? Well, you have a master in computer science. You're now getting a PhD in how this world is changing the decision-making process and how data is involved in that. So I think the mission from that perspective is pretty much accomplished.
Proud.
Yeah, very rightfully so. So Laila, I could probably talk to you all day because it feels so easy, and I'm super excited that I have the opportunity to learn from you today, because I do think you're a very, very strong role model for everyone who's listening today. So I would like to end with basically one final question. I'm involved in setting up this community for enterprise big data. We make all the books and the learning materials available for everyone who wants to download the books. There's no charges, in order to make sure that we can grow community, make sure that people become more data literate, that they start seeing the power of big data. As part of that initiative, every year we are organizing a 2-day conference where we ask thought leaders to present a session of their choice in order to inspire others. And again, participation for these events is completely free. So I will be honored to have you as a guest speaker for next year. It's in May of 2023, so still half a year out. But I already would like to kindly invite you to be there. And I'm hoping you would like to accept my invitation to be a speaker for next year's edition.
Thank you for that. Sure, it would be my pleasure.
Thanks so much, Laila. It's a really, really pleasure. So with that, unfortunately, we're getting towards the end of this session. So thank you so much, Laila, for participating in Big Data Talks. I think you've, besides your technical expertise and knowledge, which is obviously there, you've also been giving a lot of inspiration around leadership, empowerment, the way to do things on a day-to-day basis. And that if you set your mind to things and believe in yourself and your ability to achieve things, that you're actually able to do that. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much. It was really my pleasure.